All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Uh, we're looking for Van Williams and Monte Ratzlaff. Are you here?
Hi there,
I am
yes.
here.
Oh, good, good. Monty, is Van with you?
Yes, Van's there.
Okay, great. Well, let me just do a quick introduction. Van Williams is the Vice President of Information Technology Services and the Chief Information Officer for the University of California. As the UCCIO, Van serves as the system's IT leader and chief strategist for the university, collaborating with campus and health CIOs and other leaders from across the UC system. Additionally, Van oversees UCOP's IT-related strategic priorities, which include enhancing information security, simplifying and consolidating the portfolio of IT services, further developing the data analytics infrastructure, supporting online and hybrid education, and advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. Monty Ratzlaff has more than 2 decades of information security experience and has been a cornerstone of UC's cybersecurity efforts since joining the university in 2010, and he is the Chief Information Security Officer at the Office of the President. Joel and I have asked them to speak about their cybersecurity strategies and how they might impact retirees and emeriti, as well as to speak about UC's involvement in artificial intelligence and the future direction, and how the future direction of AI may impact various activities of the university. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Van Williams and Monty Ratzlaff. Thank you guys for coming.
Hey, Susan, thank you so much for having us. And I will say, I would rather you all invite us to hear about the retiree travel kind of opportunities, because it's like, now making me incredibly envious looking at some of the destinations that were on the list. I think Monty and I are going to try to tag team this as best we can. Maybe we'll let Monty kind of get started on the cyber security side of things, and then I can take the AI, and I'm sure we will kind of cross-pollinate on each other's kind of turf, as needed. What I'm hoping is that you all feel like free to kind of stop us at any time. I don't know what the correct forum is, but while Monty's engaged, I'll try to do my best to keep an eye out for hands up and signal him, and I'll ask that he kind of do the same thing for me as well.
Great, thanks, Van. It's a pleasure being here with you all today. We're going to talk a little bit about cybersecurity, and Van's going to talk about AI, and then we'll have time for questions at the end. If we don't address something, feel free to ask us when we get to the Q&A portion. One of the things that I think you all wanted to hear about is sort of the support level that you may or may not receive as a retiree or an emeriti. We polled our CIOs across the system just to try to get a sense of how that looks today. And we got some responses that I wanted to kind of share with you all. It does vary from campus to campus. So depending on where you may have retired from, you may have a different experience in terms of the level of support, things like lifelong email, those types of things. And so we recognize that that's going to be slightly different depending on where you last worked, if you will. We know that some emeriti get, probably a little more privileges, if you will, than a general retiree, and that's what we're hearing from our campuses. We know that there are some times when they will forward your UC email to a new email address that is privately yours, and that you may or may not have that lifelong sort of access. Some offer, location office space where they can, but in general, it does vary widely. And what we're seeing is there's not even a written policy, if you will, even at a location that says this is what we will or will not do. It's sort of based on history and status quo, and so some of those changes depending on who the leadership is. We are seeing a trend, though, that because of costs and the support of those lifelong email addresses, as well as some security concerns, that they are starting to tighten that access. And in terms of just the general cybersecurity at UC, as you can imagine, over the years, we've done a lot of work to strengthen and be more consistent. And in 2015, we stood up our threat detection identification program. And so we have a centralized security operations center. We have consistent tooling to detect malicious attacks across UC, and that program has evolved. And in the last year, we've deployed EDR, which is endpoint detection and response software on all devices across UC. But we also have tools that sort of sit at the edge of a network and look for malicious traffic from attackers outside of UC. And so that program continues to evolve, and we're working to make that even more consistent across UC to protect our digital assets as well as the different resources that we have to support UC and especially our research environments. So I'll kind of just leave it at that, but we look forward to your questions. And Leanne, if you want to take it over with AI.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I will add, which is nothing, Monty gave all the details. It was actually fascinating to me as we were doing the research to see where we were at. And so it is one of those areas where we have slotted on the agenda for the CIO meeting that's coming up next. And I think the question really is there an opportunity to kind of get better alignment across the different campuses? And should we actually be, kind of having one standardized approach to supporting Emeriti, kind of going forward? We don't have any answers on it, but certainly the data basically kind of, has raised some interesting questions. So thank you all for even asking for the update.
And just responding to the question in the chat, those, like I said, those are decisions that are made locally. So Van and I don't have even visibility into the specifics of, like the size of your capacity of your email box. But that's, I think, what Van is saying is we'd like to see, and we would support a more consistent approach across all locations.
Do you by any chance have an idea of what, I mean, is there some kind of record of what other campuses are doing? Because I'm out of curiosity, I've been working with the email Google collaboration team, and it was a process to inform all the retired staff and Emeriti about the email reduction that was happening. So I'm just curious if there's some sort of idea as to what other campuses are doing, just so that we're aware of what's going on.
So by and large, almost every campus has been doing that reduction activity that's been reported. What we don't have a lot of insight into is what the change management around it has looked like, Aisha. But it's certainly something that, as part of that agenda for the CIOs that we can kind of include as well, and maybe report back in a written fashion around, like, what the landscape for that looks like. I think, the kind of the most challenging part for it has really been, as Monty set out, everything seems to be, happening very locally. And also it does not seem that, like, even within the local environments, that there is like any documented standards approaches towards how they kind of provide support and how they engage with it. So I think it's just an area that we need to try to get a little bit more maturity happening, whether or not it's a system-wide standard or whether or not just really kind of working with our campus colleagues to have a more consistent documented approach that's local.
Van, there's a couple of questions that have come up. Ken Chu has a question, I think.
Yes. So this is really a follow-up on Aisha's question. A lot of the times when we as Emeriti or retirees speak to people at administration, they'll just throw up their hands and say, well, that's technically impossible, or that just costs too much. And they never really explain that. So one example, fortunately, we have not on our campus had any rumblings that I am aware of that we're going to cut back on email, because email continuation is a big privilege for me. It's really important. So my question is this, is it really costing them a whole lot to keep my email going for another, let's say, 10 years? Or if they've already got a a parking by plate system in place, which I know several campuses do, which allow Emeriti to park for a special rate, sometimes complimentary. Is it really that much of a technical uh, barrier to adding us to the parking by plate system? I guess you probably can't give a definitive answer, I'm sure. But they're always waving their hands and saying, well, this is technically impossible, or this is just
No.
way too much.
So Ken, I'll answer the one part of it, which is kind of the cost side, and then I'll give the very easy for me, not being the person to implement the solution answer. All right. We had a number of large providers that for over a decade. Uh,
Uh-oh.
Oh, what happened? We lost him?
We lost the IT people? That's not reassuring.
No, that's not good.
I'm still here. It looks like Van is on, but maybe he lost connectivity.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe we should go on to the next question, and if he comes back, we can get the answer to that one. Joel, you were the next up with a question.
So I have a kind of a cluster of two separate questions. Particularly for things that are university mandated, like this Trilix business. It comes down a little bit to what constitutes a UC computer. And that gets to be not so clear um, when you come to retirees and emeriti. Uh, Many of us have purchased our own computers, so it's not with UC funds. And secondly, um, some of us, many of us, I suspect, only deal with the university in terms of email or library functions, where we're not dealing with business computer, patient information. So, in what sense are we covered by some of these mandates? Um, and please tell the campuses to remember to address this, because I'm sure there's going to be any number of other mandated things that are coming up in the future. And the final thing is technical support. Most of us have gray hair or no hair, as the case may be, and we're not too savvy with technical support, and it's not uh, clear how much technical support we can get from our individual campuses.
So I'll deal with the second question first, which is the technical support, and that's the thing that we're seeing is inconsistent across locations. And so, we would support having a more consistent approach, even to having, some sort of a written policy, even at the location level, to say this is what we're going to do with support for emeriti and retirees, and so it is consistent. So that's just sort of the cases of today's. It's not consistent across the systems, across locations, sorry. In terms of what constitutes a computer that would fall into sort of a mandate, and you mentioned Trellix, we have a standard that was drafted a while back. It isn't published because it's hasn't been finalized, because we have some other policy sort of rules that we have to go through to get something like that ratified to the point where it could be published. But in that standard, it's essentially, and I'll just say it in a nutshell, if a computer is used for UC business and it's a UC managed computer, it needs to have Trellix installed on it. If you have your own personal computer and you're a retiree, that wouldn't fall under that mandate because that's your personal computer you're using at home. But it's really focused on, is this device used for UC business? That's where we focus because we want to protect the university at that point. And Van, you were giving a great answer and you dropped off.
What I said was so profound, kind of when the message hung, I'm not sure I can actually repeat it, Monty. But hopefully, like you were able to kind of give a good answer for it and we were at a good spot. So I won't rehash it if it's already been addressed.
Okay, Jose Woodka, you had a question?
Yes, I do. Thank you. So this is related excuse me, related to Joel's and the question and the answer. First, it's completely unclear what is university business. One can argue that every email I send that's related to the university is university business, and therefore this is a university computer, and therefore I must use Trellis. And so that statement is not clear, needs to be clarified exactly what is meant by university business. Secondly, the IT people at UCR mentioned that while uh, uh, Zoom and email, which are two of the main programs used by our association, are currently excluded in the sense that Trellix is not required if you use email or Zoom. That may change. And this is like Damocles' sword hanging over everybody. The Trellix, Ninja One, and all these things are extremely intrusive, and most people will be very confused in using them, installing them, or reticent to do so. So when so my questions are, first, what is university business? Second, who decides and when would it be decided and how can we participate in that decision? Whether email and Zoom will be included into the applications that must be covered by Trellix if used under the university umbrella. Thank you.
So I can start a little bit. Jose, you know, um, are you being paid by the university to kind of conduct that business?
You're muted, Jose.
Sorry, no, I'm not. However, I do represent the university. I still carry on research. And
Yeah, so that makes sense. So I think that the kind of core of it right now is normally like if you go and you engage in a paid relationship for it, there is some agreement somewhere that covers you. So, like for instance, if you were a contractor, there would be a statement of work. If you were a policy covered staff, you'd have a set of university policies that covers you. If you're, participating as covered staff, there's a collective bargaining agreement that covers you. But usually the work is kind of covered underneath some type of agreement that you'd have, and that would be used as the backbone. So a lot of the work that we've been doing right now has really been at the intersection between what our existing university policies are, our CBAs, that we need to kind of apply with and how that intersects with it. If you are going out there and you're representing the university as an agent, but you're not doing it in a way where it is you're being paid to conduct that work, right? That's not something that any of our work that we've kind of engaged with labor would kind of consider to be covered, where you would end up having to have these equipment installed. And also, as Monty pointed out, really the core of the policy right now is around university-owned and managed devices. And so the perspective that we have been really trying to work with our campus colleagues is if you're paying someone to do the work, the law requires you to provide them with the equipment to be able to do their job. And we want to make sure that any equipment that is, being provided by the university, which the standard kind of, constitutes as university owned or managed equipment, that equipment actually has the device. Our intention is not for this to be applied to personal devices. It's for the university to kind of provide any workers with the equipment that they need in order to do their work.
Just one last comment. It will take just one second. Again, that's not satisfactory. I bought my computer using grant money before I retired. It's owned by the university. So all these nuances they have to be clarified, have to be clarifications. My constituents, my association, is confused and worried, and we get no clarity. So it would be useful for the university to put out actually a thoughtful, clear, and complete description of what is carried, taking into consideration all possible normal situations.
Sure. So I think that that's certainly kind of absolutely right. So I think one of the things that we've continued to do is to iterate on the messaging. So, we on the faculty side engage quite a bit with the faculty senate, the UCACC on it. They provided us with a fair amount of feedback. Those feedback that they provided ended up resulting in clarifications around multiple standards. We worked with the campuses and we continue to basically take those feedbacks. And so if there are edge cases like this, we can bring it back to those committees and say, hey, we need to go and do another round of evolving the standard to kind of provide some clarity around it. I think one of the things we'll have to go out there and learn when I worked at UC Santa Cruz, just because you actually had a university laptop that was purchased by it, you could still make arrangements when you separated to kind of transfer ownership of that laptop to you. I don't know, and it's a conversation to have with our kind of local CIOs as to is there a standard that says that you can provide laptops to people that they're continue to be university owned even if they're separated from it, and if there is, then we can kind of clarify if that's acceptable, and if not, we can figure out how do we evolve our standards to do it. So I think it's a great issue to raise and flag. We have it captured, and we'll kind of figure out how do we address it. But thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right, John Meyer has a question.
Yeah, I appreciate your comments about getting everyone together, the campuses and the mothership, to get more consistent standards. I just encourage you to consider some principles, and I understand that security is essential, but also another principle, especially for this group, is to keep people engaged. So to make sure that the walls aren't so high that it's hard to get into certain systems, or, I mean, it's certainly easy to get into the development office, and donate, but for other avenues to get into, campus, just to make sure we keep people engaged. So, the fence should be high when it's critical for security, but, not overdone in all instances to, buy tickets at a performance hall. If I don't have campus credentials, I go to a whole nother system. I mean, it just seems like having those principles discussed in advance, where a high principle, in addition to security, is also to keep people engaged to support the university, especially in these times.
Thanks, John.
So that makes total sense. I don't know, Monty, if you wanted to respond to that or not.
I think it's great feedback, and I've made a note of that, so I appreciate that.
Okay, John
Yeah,
Gilbert
and
has a question.
I'll follow up, Susan, and just said, so our university policy right now, just around security, it is the attempt is to be principle based, and I think one of the things that we've said in there is, we want to make sure security is a shared responsibility, and then I think the one, John, that it's very consistent with what you put out is that we kind of assume risk level is the thing that drives everything. And so we've tried to operate on that way. And I think what I would kind of say is certainly, I know my colleague Cheryl Lloyd has spoken really highly as this group and kind of has said that you all have continually given her like amazing feedback during her tenure in this role. And I certainly basically treat feedback as a gift, and I would be happy to kind of like continue the engagement going forward if you feel like there are things that come up where we need to make sure that we calibrate our risk adjustment on it to make it easier.
Thanks, Van. John Gilbert from Santa Barbara has a question.
I can be brief because Van just said what I wanted him to say. Thank you very much, both of you, for being here. And this is a complicated set of stuff that's becoming more and more important to the emeriti and the retirees. And it's really important to keep an engagement going between you folks and CUCEA and CUCRA leadership. And I see Roger's got his hand up, so he can talk about the JVC report if he wants. Thanks.
Okay, but before Roger, we've got Dan Mitchell has a question.
Yes. One thing that I've noticed is that in order to block potentially malicious emails, the system has become so tight that things that you subscribe to don't come through, or they come. I get a long list of here are all the things that we've blocked, but that comes at the end of the day, not at the beginning of the day. If I go on to some website where you have to, it's got some protection so that they're going to send you a code and you punch in that code to access it. If I don't get that code message until the end of the day, I can't sign on. So, and the system doesn't seem to have a lot of learning capacity, telling it that, no, this is really something that I routinely subscribe to and you should accept, doesn't necessarily convince the system that indeed we can let these class of emails through. And it's unclear to me who I even go to complain about it.
Hey, Daniel, I can take that one as an email security administrator since probably 2004. I fully understand the pain points that you're talking about. I no longer have to do that, thank goodness. But what those sort of tools that are looking and sort of black holing, if you will, this the bad malicious emails that do sometimes get caught up with other emails that are essentially what we would call a false positive. That's a consistent process. I mean, it's a continuing process, is what I meant to say. It's about it depends on the tool that is in place. And again, we're talking about very, wide use tools across UC. So we don't have just one email system. It would be great if we did, but we don't. We probably have 100 or more. And so even at a location, if you look at Santa Barbara, you look at UCLA, they might have 20 or 30 or 40 email systems. And so each one of those has a different set of tools that look for malicious emails and do some action based on that. And so unfortunately, I don't have a great answer for you. I think the best option is, if this is happening at your former campus, is to reach out to their IT folks and let them know and that this is happening to your email. And I think reporting false positives is something that is helpful to those email administrators.
Thanks. Roger, a quick question. We're trying to get back to the AI discussion.
Very quick. The first question is, what is endpoint detection? And the second question is, what is the incremental cost for providing another email address? I think Van was about to answer that second question, but then he had some IT problem.
Can I hit the last one and Monty, I'll let you do the first one? Sorry, I thought we might have already, Monty might have gone and given the answer. So I think what I was getting at was, it used to be that the cost for these things were free. And the cost it's a variable cost. So it's a combination of, an individual charge for a user, but then also kind of a charge for how much storage space that they ended up providing. I think it was back in 2023 that a couple of these large companies announced that they would no longer be giving space away for free. And they indicated to people that they would be charging them based upon a per user license, as well as kind of for the amount of storage that they had. A number of, especially our research colleagues, were using the space as backup spaces, and so a large amount of data sets that were in it. The dollar amounts were in the multiple millions of dollars per campus that they were going to be asked to start paying, that they hadn't budgeted for and they weren't going to be paying for after. And so I think that was really the incentive to go out there and start to both reducing the amount of data that they supported people in having, and then when some campuses reducing the amount of counts that they had that they were maintaining. I won't be able to go out there and tell you what the per user amount is, per year, but I just wanted to kind of give you an idea around the aggregate amount that really led them to make that decision.
So I'll address what is endpoint detection and response software. It's a software that gets installed to detect malicious activity. So let's say you inadvertently downloaded a file that you thought was going to do something for you that was really great, but it actually was something that a hacker, if you will, created to take over your computer. So in this sense, the EDR would detect that and say, oh, this is not what you wanted. This is bad. And it's starting to do stuff to your computer so that the attacker can take over your computer or steal your data. So it picks up on that. It sends an alert to our security operations provider, and their analysts, they have some tools that kind of, help them triage that. And then they can say, this is bad. And so they let your local IT folks know, hey, this is bad. You should probably go investigate what's happening on this computer because there's something, wrong happening here. And that's really the point of the software, is to protect your computer and protect the data, and then further protect the environment that that computer is in. Because oftentimes, once a hacker gets control of your computer, they then try to use that computer to attack other computers on your network and try to get to other resources. So it's really a point of protection for us.
Thank you. Cheryl, did you have a quick question?
Yeah, just a quick comment, and happy to discuss with Van and Monty later. I'm not sure that all the CIOs and CISOs have view into how involved the retiree and emeriti community is, and how still engaged folks are, even though they might retire. I mean, we have people that sit on committees, people that do work, and they don't get paid for that work. And so we should probably have an offline discussion, maybe give you some viewpoint into that for when you go back to talk to the CIOs and the CISOs, because I'm not sure, that's not what they're thinking about from day to day. They're thinking about pretty much the working population, but this population is pretty engaged and working with all the campuses on different levels.
Thank you, Cheryl. Can we switch to Van, go back to Van, and maybe get a few short remarks about AI, because that was another thing we really had hoped to discuss today.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe I can just offer Cheryl and Susan and others. It may not be a bad idea to kind of have, maybe two representatives from this group meet, once or twice a year and just kind of meet with the CIOs. And if that is of interest, I would be happy to make sure that we kind of create that space on the agenda so that we can kind of support a continual touch points in two ways.
Yes, I think that would be great. I think both the retirees and the emeriti councils would want to have representation with those.
Yeah, so I'm happy to kind of follow up outside of that. And then I will see if I can do the AI piece in maybe less than 5.
Yeah, that's fine. I think.
All right. So I think we have a new president that started September 1st. That new president introduced an item at the last Board of Regents meetings. And when he introduced the item, it was an item on AI. He said one thing that was really important. He said he was asked, what are the most important things that you kind of see coming in for your presidency? And his response to the board was, how the university navigates kind of, an uncertainty around, the new federal administration, and then artificial intelligence. So that, is an interesting, kind of gateway to the conversation, because the president, has as his perspective that UC should be higher education's leader in artificial intelligence. That's really kind of his vision. What that means is that the way that we go out there and we teach, the way that we conduct research, the way that we kind of engage in our public service mission, and especially kind of the way that we engage in clinical care, all of those things need to kind of have AI, kind of being thought about and, where appropriate, kind of embedded. I think he's also been very, very kind of thoughtful that whenever we talk about AI, you can't talk about it without the word responsible being attached to it. And that responsibility for it resides in two ways. One is that it is done in a way where folks feel like there's a level of trust that they can have in it. The other one is in a way where it's being applied that's kind of ethically and morally responsible, right? So that's really kind of the way that we've gone about thinking about how do we support our campuses and leveraging this? How do we kind of build capabilities around it? Uh, we have spent, boy, a better part of actually probably almost 3 years now, really kind of steeped and engaged in this space, largely through a group that's called the AI Council, that has had a pretty cross-functional group of people that have been working and thinking about this space for a while. So these are folks that are computer scientists, engineers, data scientists, ethicists, folks that are engaged in the legal component of it, but a really kind of broad group of folks. And what we've kind of realized from engagement with that group, engagement with administrators and faculty at large, is that the only way that we're going to be able to advance that vision of AI for the UC is really kind of focusing on three strategic pillars. That first pillar is that the UC has to serve as a function that really is engaged in scaling innovation. And what that means is that we don't want to, at the center, assume that you can kind of build every AI solution, or that we would actually have enough knowledge to build AI solutions at all. We believe that innovation happens at centers, in departments, in labs, within individual campuses and medical centers. The role of UC is to be able to incentivize those innovations happening, identify them when they do happen, and then look for ways to kind of make sure that there's a much greater level of awareness of the innovation happening, and where possible, apply funding and resources to kind of scale it, right? A wonderful example of this is UC Irvine has gone out there and built a product that takes a faculty resume that's part of the promotion and tenure process, and then it can apply AI to extract all the information from that resume, extract information from data sources, public and private, and then build out a website for that faculty member that highlights what they do, that makes it very easy for the media to be able to find them, understand, what their areas of specialties are, and then, kind of search for them. Um, Now, of course, we see this and we say, hey, this seems like this is a wonderful, thing. How do we bring it to a larger group? And so, we engage in getting it in front of our academic senate. We engage in getting it in front of some of our other administrative leaders. And now the question is, well, seeing that there is a broad level of appetite for that, is there amount of funding that we can provide to help scale that service out, right? So, pillar number one is really about scaling innovation. Pillar number two is around fostering strategic partnerships. Many of you all who are kind of paying attention to this might see a news article where somebody says Microsoft is planning to spend $30 billion on AI data centers over the next quarter, right? Or Facebook is going to be spending $100 billion over the next year. The UC is, I think we made $57 billion last year, right? It's huge. But for some of the companies, in terms of the investments that they're making, all of the money that we made wouldn't even cover half a year of investments that they're making in AI, right? And there's no way that we can kind of support the type of innovation that we want to see happening, and certainly kind of having it embedded at the level that we want it to be embedded at, without actually going out there and partnering with companies. Right. And so, part of what UC's role is to kind of engage with large companies like NVIDIA, like Microsoft, like OpenAI, and really try to kind of help them identify how you can accelerate work happening at a national lab, or work that might be happening in drug discovery at UCSF, right? But really basically kind of serve as uh, you know, a place that convenes and networks these locations together in order to be able to scale impact faster. Right. Our third and our final pillar is around preparing California's workforce. We don't happen to believe that AI is a silver pill. It's not an area where we're like, hey, we're going to be replacing folks to use it. We feel like AI really is about co-intelligence. It is around figuring out how do you partner a human being, with a piece of software, with a piece of technology, to be able to kind of do a lot of high value work, do it faster, do it better, do it with a larger amount of impact. Right. And in order to do that, in terms of kind of preparing California's workforce, there's a couple different areas that we need to kind of engage in. One is figuring out how do we partner with our extension programs to kind of provide a much larger set of AI training for all of the different California citizens that we have. All right. How do we go out there and work to develop some constituents that are some components that are bolt on to our undergraduate education and to our graduate education so that they can start leveraging these AI tools, gain access to these AI resources, learn to kind of think about how to use them in different ways. And then also kind of working with our local campuses to think about from an employee base and from a faculty base, what are ways that we can kind of incentivize them learning more around AI? And some of that is building out curated set of AI curriculums that are available to all campuses to be able to learn how to apply AI to marketing, AI to financial analytics, AI to fundraising, but to really become a lot more personalized and giving them access towards it so that everybody really becomes way more competent in their use of the technology. So those are the three pillars. I want to end just by saying, what's next, is we're trying to explore a couple of different opportunities. One is really trying to partner around investing in a system-wide computational and data and AI set of infrastructure that would be available to all campuses. Because right now, some of our campuses have a little bit more than others, and we need to be able to kind of democratize access to high quality resources, data, and AI, so that more of our researchers, no matter what the campuses are, have access towards it. And then applying on top of that some level of funding around bringing together a lot of AI research that's happening at disparate campuses into an AI research hub. That is a system-wide way of making sure that you have folks that are working on really innovative things in AI, but that may not necessarily always have the opportunity to kind of be aware, see each other, engage with each other. We start to kind of facilitate that cross-pollination of work. And then finally, looking at building out some composable AI elements for learning and teaching. Much of the teaching and learning happens at the campuses. We believe that needs to continue to happen. And we don't really want to stop wheel reinvention. What we want to be able to do is when kind of like somebody does invent the better wheel, we want to do what we can in the teaching and learning space to make sure that more people are aware of that wheel and they can kind of like embed it more easily into their classes.
Great. Thank you so much, Van and Monty. This has been really a very interesting dialogue, and we look forward to participating with you further.
Thank you again for inviting us, and enjoy the rest of your meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We now are going to have a break. We're a little bit behind schedule, although since Sue Barnes did her presentation earlier, we're actually not that far behind. And so we're going to take a 15-minute break until 3 o'clock, and we will reconvene at 3.